The Freedom or Bust podcast is for indiepreneurs, aka self-employed freedom junkies who create their own employment in pursuit of freedom, independence, and purpose. Our mission with this podcast is to inspire 1 million people to join the entrepreneurship revolution. We believe that self-employment is the ultimate form of empowerment. And that's why we created this show for indiepreneurs and micro businesses. Now, we'll get into what this podcast is all about and who it's for later. But first, we wanted to share with you the story of why we escaped the rat race and became entrepreneurs and how we came to be talking with you today. We also have another podcast called Turning Pain into Purpose with Joelle and Natalie, where we share more of our entrepreneurial journey. We are Joelle and Natalie Rivera. We own a digital media publishing company and an online course and training company called Transformation Academy. We're serial entrepreneurs who have started businesses ranging from a photography company to an import business, from a holistic virtual office center to an adolescent coaching center for at-risk youth, and from a book publishing company to running conferences, festivals, and coach training programs. We've both been coaches, speakers, authors, and educators for over a decade and have always been in the business of empowering individuals to reach their potential through personal evolution, including mastering a mindset of success, using their full potential, and fulfilling their greater purpose. At the time of this recording, we have more than 60 online courses and 60,000 students from 189 countries around the world. Our courses cover topics including entrepreneurship, business development, life coaching, psychology, and personal growth. But what we do, or what we've accomplished, isn't what this show is all about. It's about the journey we took to get here, the fact that we committed to living a life of freedom and independence, and then had it all come crumbling down due to a long-term illness, and how passive income actually saved our lives and launched us to where we are today. We live at the beach, create our own schedules, and work with clients and students we absolutely adore, and get to teach and coach people every day to transform their lives. Because of people like you, we are able to live our passion and purpose every day. And we do what we do because we want the same for you.
So first of all, we just want to welcome you. We are truly, truly, truly excited to be launching the Freedom or Bust Transformational Entrepreneurship Network. And the reason being is that we know how information and access to information can really transform your lives. And as you see how we've used this in our journey, when we share our journey, which we're going to do today, it's really about understanding that anything is possible. And that's really what we hope to do, is share our journey and share other people's journey that are really going to give you the insights that are going to help you move you forward.
And so the first question we want to address is, what do we mean by freedom or bust? And really what we're trying to capture here is that there are people out there like you, like us, that want to live life on our terms. There's a certain lifestyle that we want that involves being free to do what we want, free to make our own decisions, free to do what we love, and ultimately all comes down to a refusal to settle. And a refusal to not fulfill our life's purpose and follow our calling and do what we were made to do on this earth. And so if that sounds like you, then the Freedom or Bust podcast is absolutely going to inspire you and empower you and give you tools to be able to live your version of freedom, whatever that looks like, whether you're already an entrepreneur or if you're dreaming of becoming one, and whatever it is that you do, whatever you love. Our whole point of having this podcast and also our network and our other podcasts is to help people like you, like us, live that life of freedom and pursue their own destiny. And so on a side note here, we're going to tell you about our story, our journey of how we got here. But we also have another podcast called Turning Pain into Purpose with Joelle and Natalie. And in that podcast, we go into much greater detail about all of the different aspects of our journey, both before we met each other and once we started working together. And so that being said, we can get started telling you a little bit more about who we are and why we're here.
And just to add to that, really, freedom is to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. to understand that you have that flexibility and are able to do that. And also that a lot of times, we have experiences that create pain in our journey, but those challenges can be our biggest blessing, as you'll see in our lives and as you see in the lives of all those that we've interviewed.
And so let's get started telling you a little bit more about ourselves. And so my journey to entrepreneurship ultimately was like written into my destiny in some ways, because I've always felt so far outside of the box. And I never liked the idea of the traditional American dream. I literally used to stand up on a soapbox and preach about how I didn't want to go to school to get good grades, to get into college and get a job that I hated and work, 90% of my waking hours at some job and then retire when I'm 65 and then statistically die within a few years. It was just, I never liked that idea. And it was the catalyst for me wanting to become an entrepreneur. But at the time, of course, I was a teenager and I didn't really know how. And so I did try to dive into that box and wasn't terribly successful because it just wasn't who I was.
And partially for me, at a young age, I was exposed to entrepreneurship, seeing people create their own destiny. So I always was intrigued by what other people were doing. In fact, even in like elementary school, we used to sell like Snickers and candy bars in school. And the first time I made $1 off of my own work and something that I did, I was like, whoa, this, I knew at that point I was not able to settle, that I really wanted something more out of my life. I wanted to be able to create my own destiny. And even though I had all these different jobs throughout my journey, I always felt like I just didn't fit in. Like I wasn't willing to settle or commit to that. And really part of my journey was going to college, following to be a marine biologist, and then really losing my brother in a car accident. And that really transformed my journey into realizing the vulnerability of life, realizing that nothing's guaranteed and that I couldn't just settle and that I couldn't just wait to the possibility of having an opportunity, wait for the possibility of something changing on its own, that I had to be in the driver's seat of my own journey. And at that point, I really made a commitment that I was going to open up a center for youth, at-risk youth, that I was going to go back to school and I was going to finish, which I did. I went back to school and graduated after failing my first year of college, graduated my associate with like a 3.7 or 3.8 and my bachelor's like a 3.8. And then I went master's and then I went to for the PhD. But it was really that realization that I can create whatever I want to create. And at the time, people thought I was crazy. How are you going to open up a center? How are you going to get your graduate degree when you failed your first year and you're a mess? But I did it because I had a vision, a purpose in life. And really at the end of the day, what we want people to realize that we all have a purpose and everything in our life has a meaning that's pulling us to create something.
And really, you'll hear us come back to this over and over again every time that we are talking to another entrepreneur about their story. It's that those challenges in life are what propel us forward. It's where we find the meaning and it's how we have the tools and the motivation and the drive to reach our potential. And so, like I said about my own stories, I really did not want to go into that box, but I did because I didn't really know what else to do. I didn't really recognize at that time that there was another way. And so I ended up in marketing, kind of accidentally, long story, but I ended up in a marketing and design career that wasn't really what I initially was going out for. I was actually a business major, but it worked and it actually ended up paying forward to being extremely helpful when starting my business because I had some sort of a foundation of understanding going forward. And I ultimately did that on and off in different ways, went back to school, and eventually ended up quitting my job at a pretty young age, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But just really wanted to point out that the career that I was in, not only was it not fulfilling, but it also was a bridge. It was a bridge that opened up the door to making me ready for what was to come next.
Yeah. And part of my bridge was I was working at the time, going to school full time. I was working as an investigator for the state of Florida. So I used to have a lot of time on the road. Like I was constantly driving. So I would go to the library and I would put cassettes in, yes, cassettes. And I would listen to all these entrepreneurs sharing their journey. And one person said, you need to figure out a way to make $200 a month off a side business. And if you can't do that, stop listening to this because you're not an entrepreneur. And I was like, well, I am an entrepreneur. I was like, I have to prove this. So I really started looking at what I could do, and I started exploring different things. I had just had a child, and I wasn't willing to settle because I was working crazy hours. And I remember I ended up buying surplus of sandals from Macy's or something like that. And then I started selling them on the side. And I realized that I can create enough revenue or some revenue from that. And that just really solidified the beginning part, but really my first big leap where I jumped off and said, well, this is what I'm going to do, is that I ended up opening a photography company. And that happened from me wanting to leave the company I was in and really brainstorming with family and opportunities and things that was possible for me to be able to do. And I opened up the photography company. In a week, I had made what I usually make in a month. And that to me was, okay, I'm quitting. I'm opening the center that I always said I was going to open. And I really deep dive into my passion, my dreams, and everything. Because at that point, I had studied so much entrepreneurship that I felt like I can really take the leap. And even if I failed, I would figure it out.
Well, and that's really a big part of what entrepreneurship is. And one of the things that we talk about a lot with our clients and in our courses is that confidence is not the belief in yourself that you're going to, you already know how to do this, you're great at this. True confidence is the belief that you're going to figure it out. And like that is the probably number one trait of an entrepreneur that's going to be successful. And my own journey as far as how did I make this transition into being an entrepreneur? Well, what had happened was I was miserable at my job. And I actually had about 10 years of my life that I had chronic fatigue syndrome. And so long story short, ultimately I had mono when I was in high school, and I never really fully got my immune system back up. I felt like crap. All the time I was exhausted. And so I didn't realize there was anything wrong. I didn't know I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I just knew that I felt terrible. And I started to realize over time that part of it was just like my life was not mine. I wasn't living my dream. I wasn't honoring myself. And I wasn't clear at the time what that really meant, but I knew there was something wrong. And really it all came down to one day I woke up and my alarm went off. And I reached over to hit the snooze button. And as I reached over, the thought came into my mind, if I had to kill someone so that I never had to wake up to this thing again, I would do it. And then I was like, holy crap, did I just think that? And so that was like the trigger moment where I knew what I had to do, even though it really scared the crap out of me. And I did. I was like 23, maybe just barely 24. And I went in to my job and I quit. And again, another bridge, I convinced them to hire me as a contractor to do some of their design work. So I started a design company, and that was really how I got started. But really, it all came from this deep inner knowing that I could not submit to the traditional employment life. It just wasn't who I was.
And really, when we talk about figuring it out, it's really knowing that you're willing to put the work in. And even in everything that we've created is knowing that we will do whatever we need to do to make this successful. Like there is no plan B. Like once we realize and we focus on what we want to focus on, there's no plan B. So whether we stay up all night or whether we put in a lot of hours, whether we call a lot of places, whatever it is that we need to do, we're going to do it. And what ended up happening with the photography company was that I put all these like things of possibilities. I started Googling like how to open up a photography company, contracts and everything, even though I didn't even really know how to set up lighting or anything. And I was able to get my first contract like 3 or 4 days later because I was telling everyone that I had this photography company and this is what I was planning to do. So I had a bunch of contracts with daycare centers that I was able to get. One daycare center, they own like 6 different daycare centers. And again, I was able to make enough money. So really what happened was that I ended up opening up an adolescent life coaching center in Orlando, which is, again, what I had said I was going to do once my brother had passed away. So I kind of fulfilled that part of my destiny, of my journey, of the purpose that gave me meaning for so many years. And then shortly after that, I had to leave the organization. And when I left the organization, I met Natalie briefly. We talked for a couple minutes, and then several years later, we met up again. And that's really where our journey kind of began together. And she actually ended up taking over the organization when I left. So
Yeah, and so the way that all happened, we like to joke that we started the same business, but not at the same time. And so, like you mentioned, that he had to leave for family reasons after he had started it. And I was actually finishing my last semester of college because when I had quit my job and started my own business, I went back to finish the final classes for my final year of my degree, finally, after like 8 years. And so what I had done is I sat down and I looked at the calendar of when I'd be graduating, and I had created this vision board of what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted my career or my business or whatever it ended up being to look like. And so I was thinking about what I wanted and looking at the calendar, and I circled a date and I said, start work. And so sure enough, the last week of school, right before graduation, I just happened to check Craigslist of all places, which I didn't normally do. And I found this woman looking for a business partner to run a teen coaching center. And it was like exactly what I had envisioned that I wanted. And so I met her, we hit it off. We decided that I'd start working with her the following Monday. And it actually ended up being the exact same day that I had circled on my calendar. And so like Joel mentioned, you know, a few weeks later, he came through just to get his things as he was moving out. And we met for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, never thought anything of it. And a couple years later, after both going through some huge transformations in our lives, he actually came back to check out what we'd done and see what had happened to his baby that he had launched. And when we met each other at that point, it was like, oh, well, here's someone that obviously shares the same passions, that started the same business, not at the same time, and was very much in alignment. And so shortly thereafter, not only did we come together as a couple, but we also started working together and realizing that what had been established with this center wasn't really what we wanted, partially because it just wasn't the scenario we were looking for, but then also because we realized that we absolutely loved coaching, but we wanted to be working with people that wanted to change versus people who we had to drag through life. And so it was a big transition for us.
And then we ended up just starting the coaching business. But before I even get into that, I just want to share a quick lesson from the coaching adolescent life coaching center. Another lesson that I've learned throughout my entrepreneurship journey was that the first time that we put it out there, we went to the schools and they were like, well, we don't know who you are. We don't want to work with you. Went to the sheriff's department. They're like, well, we don't know who you are. We don't want to work with you. But what ended up happening was that we looked at it as the ladder, ladder of credibility to be able to reach what we want to reach. And we said, so who do we have access to that might want our services that would help us build the credibility to eventually work with the schools? So we hit up, the big mega churches in the area that we knew that work with the sheriff departments and they work with the school systems and stuff like that. So we were able to get in with them to start working with them. And then as soon as they said yes, we went to the sheriff department and said, we have contracts or we're working with these mega churches and other community agencies, and say, oh yeah, if you're working with them, bring us a proposal. And then once you have the sheriff department, you go into the school system and say, we're working with the, communities, all these community services. We're working with the churches, mega churches. We're working with the sheriff department. And they're like, okay, then we want to work with you. So again, everything that you do in life, you might not be able to get the access initially to where you want to end up in, but that doesn't mean that you can't build upon that to actually get to that point. So what ended up happening was that we started our coaching business and we were doing coaching. I was working full-time as a psychology instructor at the time. And we got to a place that I had to make a decision whether I was going to go full tenure or what we were going to do when we grew up. And our coaching business was doing okay. It wasn't thriving. We weren't focusing 100% with it at the time because obviously we had other things going on. And we ended up saying, let's deep dive and let's do this. So we ended up going to Puerto Rico and spending some sabbatical over there to kind of try to figure it out.
Yeah, and we were there for the summer. And it was really a way of giving ourselves time to take a step back because we'd both been through so much transformation in our lives. And we had gotten a lot of clarity about what we did and didn't want with our business life. But we just needed a break to be able to get clear. So that's what we did. And actually, when we came back, We were coming back. We had our business going. It wasn't up and fully functional because we had just taken off a couple months for the summer. And we actually came back and didn't know where we wanted to be in Florida. And so we actually got a room in an extended stay motel to buy us some time to figure out what we wanted to do. So we like to joke around that we were unemployed and homeless, even though it was, a good situation to be in. But the truth is that we were running out of our savings and didn't have 100% of an idea of what we were doing. And we both got offered some pretty high paying jobs at that time. And it was like one of those decision points where you just need to be all in. And we turned down the jobs.
And we were basically broke, we gotta say it that way. We are, and she's saying a good position to be in, but really most people would be freaking out because you don't have a home. You're basically homeless. You don't have an income source, and you're basically broke at this point, and you have about 1 month of money, not even to really be able to move forward with your life. So you got to figure it out now. It's sink or swim.
And so what happened was we had gone back to our roots. We were creating contracts with organizations and developing programs like we've done in the past. And some of that had started to happen. And then we were also being trained at the moment for how to be laughter yoga instructors, because we're, speakers and we do workshops. And that was a great thing to add the mix. So while we were there, someone mentioned the idea of a regional magazine that focused on things like spirituality and holistic health and empowerment. And we didn't really think much of it, but within a few weeks, or actually, I guess it was a few days of someone mentioning this and planting that seed, we kind of looked at each other and said, I think this is what we're meant to do.
And actually it happened when we left there. We both looked at each other and said, yep, this is it. And when we came back to the hotel, we decided we were going to do it. And we basically dove right in. It was almost like we call it hijacking. And we were hijacked into really just creating this, our baby at the time, and still our baby in some ways, but it grew up. So, and what ended up happening is that we ended up contacting over 600 businesses in the first month. We're knocking on doors, we were emailing, we were calling, we're doing anything that we could to get that first yes, and I remember we got turned down, I don't know how many times, but we got turned down a lot in this process. And it was just like, okay, we just move on to the next person. Eventually someone else to say yes. And again, it came to that ladder. And a Unity of Sarasota said yes to us, that they would want to advertise. They're like, oh, where have you been? We love your vision. And we just had a mock image, like a magazine, what it was going to look like. We had this vision of what it was going to be. And we explained it, and they said, yes, we'll advertise with you. We'll advertise for the first 3 months or something like that. So then we went to other organizations, said we have a contract with them. We have support from this people. And they just kept growing and kept growing as a community, really a movement, which expanded beyond our understanding of what it was going to be. We thought it was just going to be a couple of cities. And we ended up going through like a 3-hour region of drive from the north to the south where our magazine was distributed. So in the first month, I think we distributed like 6,000 magazines or something like that.
And what was great about it, which actually was a pattern that ended up continuing after this, was that we worked super hard. We just dove in. We got it done. We figured it out, even though we had no idea how to run a magazine. And we actually launched the magazine 6 weeks after we had the initial idea. But again, it's like it's sink or swim. When you are depending on yourself for an income as an entrepreneur, you just got to get shit done. You just got to do it. And the lesson that we learned that paid forward in so many ways was that it's okay to follow your inspiration, and it's okay to do it when you don't know exactly how it's all going to unfold, and just take that next step and be committed and do whatever it is that you need to do. And we actually used to do a workshop that was called F the business plan. And of course, F stands for forget. I mean, what else could you think it stands for? And really that is the lesson that we learned during that process, and that we've used over and over again, is that when you are an independent business person, you do not need a business plan. You don't need to have it all planned out ahead of time, because the truth is it's all trial and error, that you don't need to be perfect, and that doing market research and trying things out is going to give you all the information you need, because either it works or it won't, and you're going to continue to evolve. So if you needed to know your like 5 or 10-year plan ahead of time, you're never going to do anything.
Yeah. And really it's about living with uncertainty, realizing that you don't have to know what's going to happen next. You don't have to have all the answers. The more uncertainty you get comfortable with, the more your life will transform. The easier it will become to follow your dreams. The easier it will become to really transform your life and change and evolve, because you're not stuck in thinking this is how life has to be. This is how I have to be. And this is what my reality should be. So, and in that process, we did a number of businesses. We also created a number of things and stuff like that. And it's recognizing that through our journey, we've done that, and that sometimes some things didn't work, or we realized that we didn't like it. So we just let them go. It wasn't part of who we really were. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea. But then after doing it, we're like, no. And sometimes we actually handed them out to other people. Like say, oh, we've created this. You want to take this over?
And really, one of the things that we have learned that really goes along with, it doesn't have to be perfect when you start. And it's also not a bad thing if you fail. Because the truth is that everybody who starts a business, whether they're just self-employed, creating their own living, or they're actually creating a business with employees, is that sometimes it's going to fail. And actually, it's going to fail most of the time. And that is part of the game. That's part of the fun, actually. And if you can look at it as fun and trust yourself that when it fails, you're going to learn from it.
Yeah. And the reality is that you have to fail as quickly as possible, and you have to fail often. Because every time you fail, it teaches you a lesson. So most people say, well, I just wanted to launch and I want it to be perfect. I want this to be perfect. But if you do that, it's like the founder of LinkedIn said that if you wait, what?
if you aren't embarrassed by your first launch, then you waited too long.
Yep. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So realistically, it's about learning that everything has a lesson to it, but you're never going to learn that lesson if you just keep waiting around. That the best way to learn the lesson and the best way to right the ship is to just go out there and just do it. And then when you realize that it's not working, then you evolve and you change.
And most people get stuck at the idea. And that's actually something that we've done with so many people, our students, our clients, is helping them flesh out their idea, because otherwise people just sit there and think about it. But a great idea doesn't really mean anything unless you put it into action. And we put it into action many times. And like I mentioned, that 6 weeks was going to become a pattern for us. Well, all of the businesses that we started together, all of them ended up launching in 6 weeks. And so for another example is we launched a business with several other business partners, and it was like a holistic virtual office center. And we were brainstorming one day with our friends, and we came up with this idea, and we just got so excited about it. And all of us came from a similar background and worked in the same field. And it was like in that moment, the center was already born. And literally 6 weeks after that, we launched it, which was really funny because for us, it felt natural to move that fast. But for our business partners, they were like hanging on to their hats. Like, what are these people, crazy? And of course, yes, we are. But really by the end of that 6 weeks, when we were actually having our grand opening, it's like, oh my God, there we did it again with that 6 week process. And ironically, we didn't really, at that moment, still didn't know what our process was. And until we went to a conference that was actually about figuring out your process so you can teach it to other people. And that's where we had the epiphany that we had this 6 week process.
Yeah. And really talking to other entrepreneurs, we realized that it wasn't normal. It wasn't normal that most people don't have an idea and then 6 weeks later have a full business. We just thought, yeah, that's how you do it. Entrepreneurs, you have an idea and you just do it and do it and do it and then create it, right? So by going to this conference, and that's really why we talk about education. And that's really why we love this podcast and because education has made such a big difference in our lives. And every time we have access to more information, it really quantum leaps everything that we do. And what ended up happening in this conference, they were talking about process. We were talking to all these different entrepreneurs. And at one point we said, what do you do? After explaining to them a million things at the time, we had a t-shirt company, we did conferences, we did all these different things. And everyone looking at us like, oh, okay, like whatever. And when we explained to them, we launched businesses in 6 weeks, they're like, oh yeah, we want to know more about that. And they would bring people to us. They say, hey, I have a friend that's just launching a business. Maybe they should pick your brain. we realized that we do this, and what is the process? And we really sat down. And by the time that we left the conference, we realized what we did. And a couple of weeks later, we were already giving workshops to help people build their business in 6 weeks. So again, we moved fast. And once we knew our process, we solidified it, and we're already teaching it. So
yeah, and so that process that we discovered that we've now taught to thousands of people, we call it Quantum Leap Your Business in 6 weeks. And so it's really been a foundation of everything we've done since then. But really, that was really where we began. I guess that was really the launching point for us in the field of entrepreneurship, as far as working with other entrepreneurs and our business coaching and our training programs. That program was what started it all. And then, like we mentioned, we had a lot of different businesses that we did. At one point, we were running 5 businesses at the same time. So we had a magazine, we were doing coaching, we were running events and conferences, and we had a publishing company. And then we also had this holistic center. So needless to say, we were pretty burnt out, especially because for the most part, we were doing a lot of the work ourselves.
Yeah. And really what we wanted at the end, at our core, was freedom. And we kept creating, and we want to contribute. Obviously, we're driven by contribution. So every time somebody would say, our community really needs this, or there's a hole here, we would try to jump on it because we love creation and we love contributing. But we had taken away from what we really wanted to, was freedom. And just to show quickly what ended up happening, sometimes life gives you challenges, but it's really opportunities. And we ended up going on a trip to Costa Rica. And we were there for a couple of weeks to Costa Rica, and we were in the jungles, being explorers, doing some crazy things like getting on a boat in a river that's flooded, that's rushing to an hour into the jungle to stay. And it was an amazing experience. I remember so many times that I would scream out, "This is awesome." But shortly after coming back, what ended up happening was that I ended up getting sick. I got something on the trip. And at first I woke up in the middle of the night. I was shaking, shivering, sweating profusely, and didn't realize what was happening to me. And I thought at first, well, I just have something and this will go away. And I went back to sleep. But it kept happening for months, hour after hour. Every time I would wake up and fall asleep, an hour later, I was waking up. It was happening again. And it lasted for months. I ended up bedridden. I lost all my muscle mass. I couldn't really swallow solid food anymore. I lost over 30 pounds. I was in and out of hospitals. And I was bedridden, and everything around us truly, truly crumbled.
And so, like you said, again, we did tell this story in more detail in our Turning Pain into Purpose podcast. But the lesson here was that our business crumbled around us because not only could he not work, but I ended up having to be his full-time caretaker. And this went on for more than a year, ultimately, that we were in this situation where we really couldn't be running our businesses. And so, of course, it's the entrepreneur's worst nightmare. But at the same time, it kind of gave us an excuse to let go of all of this responsibility that we'd put on ourselves and be honest with ourselves about what we really did and did not want to be doing. And during this time, we also learned another amazing lesson, which was that the only part of our business that didn't really require a lot of work was our magazine, because we had subscriptions, and that passive income that we received every month from the subscriptions is literally what kept us from going under completely. And so we looked at each other and we were like, okay, how can we get more of this? And that also led us to dive into learning about online courses, which actually had already created a few, including a Quantum Leap Your Business course. And they too were giving us a little bit of passive income. And so we realized that, well, right now Joel's sick. Neither one of us can do much. We can't run our conferences. We can't go speaking. We can't do our coach training programs. What can we do? Well, what we could do was video. And so we started to convert all of those things that we used to teach in person into courses.
Yeah. And even before we could even do video, because realistically, I couldn't even walk, 10 feet to go to the bathroom sometimes. You had to help me, just walk over there. So it wasn't like we can just create courses and stuff, but we realized that because we couldn't even do that, one of the things that we could do was focus on our mindset. and really focus on our growth. And we had pictures all over the walls, all over the ceilings of things that we would do once I got better. We submitted to like learning things. I was constantly watching YouTube videos, taking online courses. I had the TV on, constantly documentaries and different inspirational things and listening to audiobooks and whatever I could do to really feed my brain. I learned how to meditate at a deep level where my body was like freaking out and going all over the place, almost having a heart attack. And I'd be able to sit there and zen and just be grateful that I even have a heart that's still beating. And being in that place of gratitude, being in that place of gratitude in life, and being in that place of gratitude to our relationship really helped us grow as a couple, as individuals, and also to what we really wanted to do was we wanted to contribute at a larger scale. We wanted to leave a legacy behind. We wanted to be able to share the information that would be lost if I ended up dying, which I had come to the acceptance that I would probably die at this point because after going through so many doctors, they couldn't find the answer and I kept getting progressively worse. So really at the end of the day, I realized that I want my legacy to be more than this. And through online courses, I could do that. I could share my knowledge, my passion, the information through making videos, through making audios. And even when I talk about doing this podcast, really the purpose of it is to just contribute. Because at the end of the day, money comes and goes. But what is the difference that you're making in the world that's changing lives? Because we're all here to change lives at some level.
And what have you been through in your life? What challenges did you overcome? What things happened to you that at first you thought, gosh, this is a curse. But now you can start to see that it taught you something. It set you up to be able to help people through something because you understand it. It turned into a blessing. And that's exactly what this experience was for us. And like he was saying, that there's so much that we learned. And for me, I wasn't the one who was sick. I was the caretaker. And it was horrible. I mean, it felt like there was no end in sight for a while. And so even in that darkest place, though, I found true happiness because I found a way to be happy, even though that was happening. And so that also feeds into why we do what we do, is we want people to be able to see that you don't have to have a perfect life. You don't have to have all the conditions that you think that you need in order to be happy. That you can find that anywhere, anytime, no matter what's going on. Just like you don't have to have a perfect life and your business doesn't have to be perfect and your relationships don't have to be perfect, but you can still take what you've done and been through and learn from in your life and help other people along their journey and pay it forward. And so that's really what this podcast and everything that we do now is about.
Yeah, but we also realized that we wanted to create a business around our lifestyle. Not the other way around, because everything that we have done is that we created a business and then wanted to create a lifestyle after we had this business. But it's the other way around. Most people don't realize that you first have to define what your lifestyle is that you want to create and then create your business around that. So, and the last time that we were in the hospital, I was in the hospital for a week and we were sitting there and I could look out the window and we could see this island. And, I kept telling Natalie, one day, just keep blinking, just have faith. We'll be over there, in a blink of an eye, in a blink of an eye. And then a year later, we were actually living on those condos that we could see from the hospital. And at this point, we had no idea how this was even possible. We had sold all our furniture. You would literally go to our living room and dining room and you just had an empty space. Everywhere you would look in our house is just empty space because we had to sell everything just to make ends meet. So today we live on the beach, we have the freedom, we have fulfillment, we live our purpose. And we say it because anything that you want is possible. First, it starts with defining it and then developing the foundation for it. And that's what we did with our sabbatical, where we learned so much to be able to create that and then just be able to take the steps to be able to do it.
And really, that's why we're here. And so the next question is, why are you here? And you're here because you are not going to accept anything less than the freedom to determine your own destiny. That you hear a story like this and you're thinking, yes, this is what I want. I want to live life on my terms. I want to fulfill my purpose. I want to take any of those things that happen to me and find the meaning in them and use them to make my life and other people's lives better.
And you're really not interested in a big business headache and managing, hundreds of people and things like that. You want to make money doing what you love. and you want the freedom of time, and you want to create your own schedule, freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. And in fact, most of the pictures that we had on our walls, we were able to accomplish it. We
used to hang pictures of our dreams, of what we wanted to do when Joelle wasn't sick anymore, all over our ceiling and our walls, because of course we were laying in bed a lot. And actually, just a quick story, one of the pictures was of a cruise, a specific one, the largest one in the world. And actually, a little over a year ago, we actually went on that cruise. And at the time when we were envisioning being on it, we really didn't think that it was possible at a practical level, but we were willing to dream beyond the horizon of what we could see from that place. And we did get there.
And it's really about also using your gifts to make a difference, because that's what it comes down to. And that's really what we know that most of you listening, all of you listening, really want to do. You want to use your gifts. You want to be in a place of passion, of purpose, but also make a difference with it.
And so this podcast, all of the episodes that come after this, who we are here for is what we call indiepreneurs, or self-employed freedom junkies. Or you could also look at it as micro businesses. So people who work for themselves or just have a small group of people that work with them. It also could be people who are corporate renegades that want to escape the rat race, or people who have a side hustle in addition to their job and are curious how they might be able to expand it. And really, more than anything, the people who this is for are people who are heart-centered, that have a calling, that want to fulfill their purpose. So business isn't just about making money, it's about making a difference.
Yeah. So we're going to have a number of guests in this process, and really transformational entrepreneurship stories to help you realize that these things are possible, that what you want to create is truly possible, and that these people had challenges, had obstacles. A lot of times what happens is that we look at someone and they're like, wow, an overnight success. Well, he's lucky or she's lucky because she had access to this, or she had all these followings, or she had resources. But we don't realize that a lot of times that's not how it started. We only see them now as they are because they put the work in. They had challenges that they had to overcome, whether it was health, financial, family challenges, or whatever it may be. And that's really what we want at our core, to help you see that it's not about being an overnight success. It's about recognizing that whatever challenge and obstacle you have, it's a blessing for your life, because it'll help you get to the next step. It helps teach you what you need to learn to really be able to make a difference.
And so our goal is to, on one hand, offer inspiration so that you have the belief in yourself that you can do it. We also are going to share tools and give you some shortcuts to what's worked for us and for other entrepreneurs who are successful. But more than anything, what we want you to develop because of this podcast is resourcefulness. And again, it comes back to that belief that I might not know how to do it, or what step I have to take next, or how it's all going to unfold. But you know what? I am willing to commit to figuring it out. And that is the absolute biggest goal that we have, is for everyone listening to develop that skill, because that is what's going to make or break your own entrepreneurship journey.
And at the end of the day, it's about letting go of excuses. The excuses that hold you back from creating the life that you want. Because realistically, it's the perfect time to be an entrepreneur. There's so much opportunities. You know, right now you can have a niche where you love doing something like very obscure that you might have said, where I can't connect to people because there's not that many people in the world. I mean, so many people in my community that like this, but you have the technology now, a new opportunity where you can have access to people all over the world that have the same passion, the same purpose as you, that you can help in their journey. And realistically for us, we have at the time of this recording, we have over 60,000 students from 190 countries, which is mind-boggling because, you know, just a few years ago, this wouldn't even have been possible for us to reach those people.
And not only do we have the communication technology that allows us to reach people anywhere in the world, but technology has become so easy. So we have information at our fingertips. We have access to all of the knowledge that humans have ever had, which is something that even 10 years ago was not accessible. Even just the evolution of what we do. When we first started coaching almost a decade ago, we were doing teleseminars. We didn't even have video. And, you know, the word podcast didn't even exist back then. So things are changing so fast. Anything that you want to do is within your reach.
And even if you think about like when we have a book publishing company, that now you can publish your own book. You know, you have books on demand, you have drop shipping, whether you have a product service. If you have a t-shirt company, you don't even have to be producing the t-shirts. You can just hire a company that does it for you and they'll send it for you. We have 3D printers that can print stuff that you might have a design that you're creating. There's so much opportunity that are opening up.
And really, one of the words that spins around in the entrepreneurship world about this is called democratization. And so what that really means is that the big companies used to be the only ones that could do certain things like create products and print books. And today, now everybody has access to do it. And a good example is something like Airbnb or Uber, where Airbnb is allowing people who have room in their house or an extra home to be able to compete with hotels, just like Uber is allowing people who have a vehicle to be able to compete with cabs. And so you're no longer limited to only be able to access these types of things through these huge companies. Now you can work with someone independent. And so that's an opportunity for you. So if you're not already an entrepreneur, there's so many ways that you can reach out and create a business by communicating directly to consumers, that you now have access to a whole slew of different types of businesses that you can just kind of plug into and get started now that didn't exist even 5 years ago.
And just global marketplaces. For example, like Alibaba, where you can get stuff imported, or you can even export things if you wanted to. Or you have things such as like Fiverr, where people get paid, or Etsy, or Udemy, online platforms that are selling courses, selling, products and services or whatever it is. There's so many things that you can put yourself out there already that is doing the legwork for you. Even if you need design work, you can go to like Wix.com and create a website easily, or 99 Designs for graphic design, or even Fiverr again, to be able to do some of those things, or a bunch of freelance sites, whether you need something coded or you need something created for you. It's not like before where how do I find these people, and you'd have to spend all this money to be able to do it. But now you can do it very cost effectively.
And really, it's just a matter of you're not alone anymore. That before, you used to either have to pay a ton of money in order to access these people that could help you with these things, or you would have to do everything yourself. And so not only is it easier to be able to get the help that you need, it's also easier to market your services. Marketing used to be such a slow, sluggish process and extremely expensive. Like the only options you had were things like newspaper ads or magazine ads or television, although, most people could never afford those. But with the internet, not only is marketing extremely inexpensive, but you can also target people like in such a specific way. So again, like Joel said, no matter how small the niche is that you want to focus on, no matter what it is that you like, you can specifically target people that absolutely love what you do. Even if you feel like you're the only one in the world, the truth is there's people out there that are looking for you, and you can target them through the modern day marketing.
And you can just spend like $10 and reach thousands of people with $10. Which is crazy. $10, not just market to people that are literally looking for what your product or service is, because you can target them. So we live in an information age. We live in a technological world. And most people say, what does that even mean, information age? And for example, you can get paid to teach what you know and love. And that's what we found with everything that we do. We have over 60 courses. We know people teaching about baking bread, for example, and making multiple six-figure income just teaching about baking bread, because there's so much opportunity. And the first thing that happens when technology expands and people have access to information, they look for knowledge. So whatever you have expertise in, you can create your product, you can create your service, but you can also teach people and make a difference in their life that way.
And so we do it primarily through online courses, but in the information age, there's so much you can do. You can do a blog, you could do a podcast, you can create ebooks. we could go on and on and on. And so really the reason why we're excited about this and why we're sharing this in this episode is that we just want you to know, if there was any doubt in your mind, that this is an amazing time to be an entrepreneur, and that even if you are still working a full-time job, there's always something that you can do on the side to start to develop those skills and to bring in additional income. And if you already have a business, if you haven't looked in the last 5 years at what's changed and what new opportunities are there, there's so many things that you could be adding to what you currently do that not only can expand your revenue, but also can give you more freedom, because there's so many more ways to do whatever it is that you do in a digital way. And so really you can make a great living doing basically anything, especially if it's online. So there are people who play video games for a living and literally make 6 figures. Same thing with people who are YouTubers that just put videos on YouTube. Like, it's ridiculous that there is no excuse at this point. So if you're passionate about working for yourself, being your own boss, being an entrepreneur, growing your business, this is the time. We are the luckiest people that have ever lived in the world. And that's especially if you live in the United States like we do. But even in countries that before didn't have much of an entrepreneurship focus, it's exploding. I mean, we have people who are taking some of our courses in remote villages that are applying it to their lives and creating income for themselves.
Yeah, we know people in all parts of the world making well over what the median income is in their country and really thriving, like dramatically, making well over 6 figures in their country, which in those countries is even a lot more than it would be like in a country like the United States. And the reason being is because there's opportunity with the online platforms and things. And really entrepreneurship is just the future. You know, your grandparents worked 1 job through their whole lives. Your parents worked 5 jobs through their whole lives. And kids now will have 5 different jobs at a time. And it's really that gig economy. It doesn't mean that they're going to have 5 full-time jobs, it's that they're going to do 5 different things. And it really comes down to that you can follow your passion here. You have a passion for this. You can do this. You can do that. You don't just have to do one thing anymore.
And really, if you think about it, if you look back in history, it's only recently that a traditional job became the norm, because before that, everyone had their own craft. You know, you'd have a blacksmith and you'd have a baker, and every household in a community contributed something that they did on their own. So truly, everybody was an entrepreneur until not that long ago. And the truth is that the future of work is going to be entrepreneurship because of the changes in our economy and automation. There's going to be shifts in the job markets. A lot of people are afraid of that, but we're not, because we see the promised land. We see that it's a matter of opportunity, because not only will people have their time freed because they're not going to be working a normal full-time job, but they're also going to get to do what they love, and they're going to have more free time. And ultimately, in the end, they're going to make the same amount or more in less time. And so the future is exciting, especially if you are listening to something like this, because you are already on the path of where the future of employment and work and entrepreneurship is headed.
And what we've learned just from our own research, obviously into psychology and our own business and working with so many entrepreneurship, is that most people think that you're born creative. And creativity comes from knowledge. Creativity comes from access to information that you have in your head that you've acquired through your years. And that's why we listen to maybe a book or 2 a week. And then we read also, we constantly doing research, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, doing what we can to grow as individuals. Because when we're confronted with a challenge, we can deep dive into that challenge in a creative way that we can create opportunities from it. And at the end of the day is realizing that you can live life on your terms. You can do what you love and really make a great living doing it and transform your life and transform the lives of people around you. And that's why we want to interview individuals so they can give you insight, so they can help you be more creative, so you can see what they've done that's really helped them transform their lives and give them the tools to really be in a place that they could have never imagined. Going from, point A of having an idea and struggling to all of a sudden being interviewed in major networks, or being able to create a thriving business with thousands and tens of thousands of people that they've served. And this is just the small tip of what is possible in your life if you're willing to take the time and just learn and move forward with faith And again, embrace uncertainty.
And so we want to honor you for being the type of person that seeks knowledge, that would listen to a podcast like this, especially all the way to the end. Because the truth is that if you are an entrepreneur and you want to create something for yourself and be in control of your own destiny and use your gifts to help other people, that the most important thing you can do is invest in yourself. And the reason why is because the stronger you are as a person and the more knowledge that you have, the more creative that you can be, and the more that you are certain about your own purpose and the more you're in control of your own life, the more you can inspire other people around you to do the same. Thank you, fellow Freedom Junkies, for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to help us grow, please rate and share this podcast. You can also become a member of Freedom Nation. Visit freedomorbustpodcast.com and sign up to receive access to exclusive content and take the 21-day happiness challenge. As you know, we believe that entrepreneurship is the ultimate form of empowerment, which is why we created the Side Hustle Business Startup course for anyone looking to create their own income and take back their power. We offer an exclusive discount for our podcast listeners. Find out more at freedomorbustpodcast.com.